Welcome to the Business and Brews podcast, where our mission is to highlight local businesses in the Triangle area and shed light on different industries. And welcome back to the Business and Brews show. My name is Gevin, Vinson, and this beautiful piece of man candy is...
I'm Ryan Smelts. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen, a little bit.
I like keeping your toes, man.
Definitely.
You wear sandals, so we definitely got to make sure we keep doing flip-flops, yeah.
I deserve it.
Anyway, sorry.
So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I have the pleasure of introducing Adrianne and Freddy of the Art Counseling.
Yes.
So, Adrianne, if you would, start it off. Tell us a little bit about y'all.
My name's Adrianne McKee. I'm a dance movement therapist with the Art Counseling. Been with them for just over a year now. Born and raised in North Carolina, went to Meredith College undergrad, moved up to New York to go to the Pratt Institute for graduate school, master's studies. Came back down this way about 7.5 years ago now. It's been a while. And live with my boyfriend Ryan and our 3 dogs.
Not this Ryan, though.
Not this Ryan, different Ryan. Different Ryan!
Are sure this Ryan?
Yeah. Surprise!
Surprise! Sorry, Toya, we're sorry.
Different Ryan.
Yes, I'm Freddy Perkins. I am also born and raised here. Born in Chapel Hill, raised in Durham. I did my undergraduate at App State, where I got my bachelor's in music therapy there. Nice. And then interned in Pennsylvania for a little bit, came back, and have worked since. I am currently finishing up my master's in music therapy through an online program at Slippery Rock University. I will be done hopefully next year.
Oh, that's good.
Next year. So wonderful. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Wait a minute, wait. So you're originally from North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
You're originally from North Carolina.
Yeah.
I'm originally from North Carolina.
Where you at, Ryan?
What about you?
I'm a dude.
The beard gives it the beard has to give it away. If you saw that beard in like a funny, anyway.
Are you?
I was raised in North Carolina and spent my entire life here minus the Army, but I was born in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Oh, Lancaster!
Amish country, yeah.
He said, I was trying to figure out where you were going.
I was like, I know that area
that's
somewhat well.
Hershey, yeah. Right. You want to go ahead and tell us what we're drinking tonight?
Yeah, I definitely do. I'm having a little bit of trouble here.
Do you need to model the beer?
It's family owned. So let me tell you a little story about this. I went in the store to get our beer, and I saw the one ale, which I'm still excited to try, but I saw this, and it said chocolate stout on the front, and I just about gave up right there. So anyway, I believe they're called Sycamore because Sycamore they have a bunch of different ones. They had a watermelon one, they had IPA this, IPA that. But it is brewed in Charlotte, brewed and canned in Charlotte, and has been family owned since 2013.
Nice.
So cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, and be honest, I don't drink beer, but I'm
This one's pretty good.
Yeah, the chocolate stout's pretty decent. I think your favorite is Sweet Baby Jesus. Is that right?
DeClaw, Sweet Baby Jesus, that's a good one.
That's a chocolate peanut butter.
Chocolate peanut butter.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot for beer.
It's a dessert beer, but it's good. It's good.
It's so good, man. It's so good.
I trust it.
Okay, so Gevin.
Yes.
This week.
Yes.
What have you been up to?
I have been actually assisting a lot of clients with trying to get stuff done before the holidays, putting their houses on the market, getting closed on houses before the holidays, or figuring out they're going to wait till after the holidays. So it's been very good. Interest rates are still insanely low, so it's been busy.
Nice.
How about yourself, man? Have you sold all of the inventory on Amazon yet?
Not yet. So actually, I am currently learning quite a bit about leads, B2B leads, how lists are purchased, wholesale, and how I can give a company search criteria and say this is our target market, and then they say, okay, we can get you 6,400 leads for X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
And then I have to figure out how fast we can actually go through that.
It's pretty cool. Sounds pretty technical, but got right now on the job.
Sales, so
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
It's a good time. Yeah. What about you guys?
This week, today was fun. It was my niece's 6th birthday party this afternoon, so I crammed myself into a Frozen bounce house. The movie Frozen bouncy house situation.
I was like, wait a second.
I was like, after I said it, I thought I should specify. Yes, so my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, he has 2 kids, so it's step niece technically, but she's a niece. And so I was bouncing around in the Frozen bounce house this afternoon and had some unicorn birthday cake, and that was fun.
The Frozen songs, Let It Go.
We didn't today, but she was very determined. She's been a big Frozen fan for a while, and of course the new movie's coming out, and so they went Halloween costume shopping, and she at first said, "Okay, no, I'll be Anna because I've been Elsa before." They walk into the costume shop, and there's Elsa 2 for Frozen 2. Oh, it was all over. She had to be Elsa 2. And my sister thought, you were already Elsa last year. So yeah. So that was definitely the highlight this week. I've been at home with my dogs a lot, setting up house still. We moved in together the end of August, so there's still lots of boxes to unpack, lots of things to go through. The garage is half full of just my things, and I gradually go through them all. But we got some things rearranged this weekend that we have been talking about doing for a while. So.
How about yourself, Freddy? Pretty good weekend so far?
Yeah, so I had yesterday, me and my roommate, we had what we call roommate date, because we're both so busy. He's in school, I'm in school, we both work. We're like, let's make a day. So we went to the mall, South Point Mall, which we both grew up in Durham, and so we were both around when the mall popped up to begin with. And so like in high school, we were all about the mall, and then when you mall yourself out, and just like the mall was really not that good and not that great. So we went with a couple of other friends and hung out, and then we went back to our apartment. We had a PJ night.
Nice.
Where we wore pajamas and popped popcorn and watched Catfish.
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah,
and then today I did work. I did schoolwork. He did schoolwork. And then I took my dog to her training class at PetSmart. We're in advanced training class.
Oh.
My baby, I had her.
I love it.
Right. Her birthday was actually on Monday. She turned 1 year old.
Aww.
And we found out we're going to have to retake advanced class because we have to work on our nervousness with people. She's very shy. So in a pass-fail course, we failed.
To retake the class. Depends.
Well, let's jump right into it. I mean, this should be definitely a very interesting episode. Actually, I'm looking forward to this one for a little bit now because this is an area that you don't hear too much about. So, I guess my first question would be is how did you guys get into the type of therapy that you're doing?
Sure.
Because if you're following any kind of therapy, usually the creative art therapy is not very common, especially in North Carolina.
Correct. I came to it, I was a dancer first and foremost, been dancing, since I could walk. Formally, obviously started around 5 or 6 and always danced. Ballet was my first love. For a long time I wanted to, be a professional dancer, and realized in high school though, like, okay, that's not really realistic, and still wanted to go off to college and try to do both, and was always really interested in psychology and psychiatry as well. Even thought about going more into the medicine route at one point. And I had a dance teacher who said, well, there's this thing called dance therapy, and it's using dance and movement as a means of psychotherapy for people. And I thought, dang, that's it, I know. And so I knew at 18 going into undergrad, that's what I was going to do. And chose Meredith College because they had kind of a program where you could design your own major. So essentially I was pre-dance therapy, dance major, psychology major, kind of almost a double major in both. Always felt more at home in the dance department. I was part of the dance company there as well, performed. That was like my first love, was definitely performing. So I think coming to it as a dancer first and foremost, and knowing what dance and movement did for me, especially, as a teenager, and there were times when that was just where I felt the best and where I felt the most confident, and really worked through my emotions as well too. And so you come into it from the art of it all first, I think, and then wanting to be a helper and a healer. And I have a lot of helpers and healers in my family as well, and a lot of teachers. And I think just that was just kind of in my DNA to go in that route of things.
Nice.
So,
Mine's kind of similar. So I grew up in music world. So I was involved in music ever since I was 6th grade, which is what, like 10, 11. Band. I was band kid through and through. Played saxophone all the way up to middle school. Then through high school, did marching band, the whole shebang. Made some of my best, most meaningful relationships and friendships through that with people that I'm still close with. I was like my roommate. We went to high school together. We were in marching band, and then came college time, and you know, like some people's parents sit you down and say, "Okay, what are we gonna do? What are you gonna do with your life?" That conversation, and they so bluntly sat me down and said, "You know, we don't see music being financially stable. Why not do something more financially stable, like computer science?" And I'm like, okay. And so it was funny. I actually went, when applying to schools, there was like the intention was to do computer science, and so I ended up going to App, where that was supposed to be the plan, and I was in a program for like science oriented majors, and you got like a scholarship and everything, and we got to go the summer before, and I sat there sitting in like college level algebra, and I said, this is not it. This is not the thing. So like I walked my behind over to the music school to like learn what existed, because I knew like I don't want to teach, that's not the gig for me. And I was like, I'm a saxophone player, so being a performance major is literally asking to live paycheck to paycheck and not know when the next meal is going to come from. And I like to eat, so I was left. The app also has like music industry and music therapy, and so I was really intrigued by the therapy option, and so I sat in on the intro course and like changed all my classes around. My mom freaked out. She said, "This is not the plan. What are you doing?" Meanwhile, my stepdad was like, "I knew this was going to happen," and was prepped for it. And that is just kind of the story.
That's cool. Well, thank you guys for what you do. I mean, it definitely does change a lot of lives. So, you know, with that, I know the company that you guys work for is still really trying to get the ball rolling and really trying to get the word out there about the different therapies that are available other than the conventional methods that are out there. What are some of the current challenges that you're currently facing?
I think a lot of it, because we're in more of the private practice type of setting, the challenges can be the cost. You know, a lot of people who need our services, you know, cost can be something that's going to be a deterrent from them seeking mental health services. I think that is a challenge as well. Dealing with insurance and billing and things like that, because of, you know, just that whole, I'm sure for lots of people, lots of practitioners, that's a big issue. So I think just, you know, for us, it's who can we advertise to? Who can we bring in, you know, that needs us? How can we advertise ourselves to different populations? People that, because obviously, yeah, you know, as a business and you want to make money, it's your job, you know, but then sometimes trying to figure out, you know, that branch of, okay, who are we going to advertise to versus, you know, who unfortunately can't afford it. And, you know, we are luckily that we'll be able to accept Medicaid starting in February 2020. That will be huge for us. That's been something that's been work in progress. It's been a work in progress to work with the insurance companies and with billing. And that's been, we luckily have an awesome billing lady on our staff, and so she's been amazing. But it's been a lot of back and forth, and I think it, unfortunately, that seems to be the case for a lot of people, even for lots of different, you know, treatments, whether it's, you know, psychiatric or medical these days, I think. But so I'd say that's, you know, one of the biggest deterrents right now.
Yeah, I think to give that more context, so in the state of North Carolina, when it comes to billing and insurance, the main way to get insurance is like Blue Cross Blue Shield or United Healthcare to reimburse and like pay out for it. They expect like the practitioners and the therapists to have a license or to be licensed in that state. And so currently, like as far as creative arts therapies go, the only creative arts therapists that are licensed in North Carolina are art therapists, and they get like the LPC, which is the credential that anyone who goes to school for like clinical mental health counseling would get. They are able to get that too through their training. But for Adrianne and I in music therapy and movement therapy world, we are not so recognized. So like within our professions, we are both like certified nationally. So like I can go anywhere and say what I'm doing is music therapy, and she can go anywhere and say anything she's doing is movement therapy. But because North Carolina does not recognize us as like allied health professionals or like health professionals, they're not dealing out licenses. And so because of that, insurance companies can then go back and say, we specifically do not reimburse for music therapy, for movement therapy, for this type of thing. And so the real challenge, like Adrianne mentioned, is like, how do people pay for it? Because then they have to pay full price. Whereas when you go to your regular standard talk therapist, you maybe pay $50 and then insurance pays the rest.
You have your copay, or you have your percentage that's covered for a certain type of service. That's going to depend on your individual plan, your family plan, that insurance company. But yeah, it's essentially, with my experience as far as the licensing and credentialing, yeah, we both have national, our national accrediting agencies have given us that, and we can, we practice under that. Yeah. But the state we're in, it's, and every state is different. Even some states that use the same language or abbreviations for their licensing, like LPC that he mentioned, licensed professional counselor. In North Carolina, it's LPC, LMFT, which is marriage and family, and then LCSW, so clinical social worker. Mm-hmm. And so if you go to a program in North Carolina and graduate, then essentially you apply for those things, and as long as you're in good standing, you get that and you maintain that, and that's where you go as far as jobs. Right. For my personal experience, my degree, it came down to the language of it. The LPC board was asking for things that said counseling, and all of my things say dance movement therapy. And so I'm sitting here saying, okay, well, here's what I have, here's what I can do. Mm-hmm. And they came back with me and said, but it doesn't say counseling. Mm-hmm. And so I was asked to take additional courses. I have a friend of mine who moved to Illinois, for example, she had to go get an entirely separate master's degree to be recognized. Wow. And that's so that we can do things like use insurance and bill and have people use copays to be in the community setting, as opposed to more of the hospital inpatient kinds of setting, which is where, a lot of our work got started. Yeah. Dance movement therapy especially got started in using with World War II veterans, people who, before psychotropic medication was available, people that were psychotic were locked in wards, and that was it. And a woman named Marion Chase was one of our founders. And she walked in there with a record player, turned on the music, and started moving with people, and had fantastic results. And so obviously I still base my passions on all of that and the work that I want to do, but we have to battle sometimes with the hires up.
Yeah, so. Yeah, it's really a tricky red tape type of thing. So even now with me, like, I'm getting my master's in music therapy through university that's in Pennsylvania, and like in Pennsylvania, they recognize music therapy. So like if I were to live in Pennsylvania, I could get my LPC once I was done. So like I'm finagling around words in classes to see like, will you let me take this exam that I have to pay to take? Right, let me move to Lancaster real quick. Let me go kick it up with the Amish folk.
Do it.
Get my buggy and horse and just make some soap.
Get some maple syrup.
Right, make some soap. There's a nice bed and breakfast I know that's there that a friend of mine's parents have.
There you go.
But no, so it makes it really tricky. Yeah, and so it becomes like paying full price, and obviously the people that need our services the most are people that can't necessarily afford to pay like $140 a session every week. And so then it becomes, well, how do we sell ourselves and still be able to make the money we need to live our lives and pay bills and everything. So even with the art counseling, like I've had the privilege of having some clients and talking with the owner Siobhan. She and Jasia both, who's our billing person, have done a really great job with like going through the language of different insurance companies and seeing like, can we work it this way? Can we work it this way? How does that work? And then if all else fails, they've been really open to the idea of like sliding scale pay. So setting like parameters and saying pay what you can within these parameters, because you understand people need the services and should be able to have access to them.
Absolutely. That's pretty cool. So, in case you can't tell, I was in the Army for 10 years. So the main question that I have, which is kind of something I'm doing a little bit on the side, which we can talk about later, is what you brought up, not just the veterans, but also like PTSD. How much have you guys dealt with that? Do you see positive results? And what resources do you guys have for the veteran community?
I personally have not worked a lot directly with veterans, but I have many friends and colleagues who have. And one of the, we currently have dance movement therapists at the Intrepid Center as part of Walter Reed outside of DC. Yes. Nice. So we have infiltrated there, and we're very excited about that. As a dance therapy community, we're small, but we're mighty. And so, we're in. In fact, one woman, Allison Fisher, she's amazing. She's one of the dance therapists there, and she's worked in several VA hospitals, both in New York, California, and now she's with the Intrepid Center. And Obama came and did yoga with her one day, and it was really cool that we got to hear about that. But I digress. That was just, fangirling a little bit there. But it is something that I know some that I've spoke with at conferences. Yoga was something that the military got behind, as far as, because I know so many of you guys have back and knee problems and things like chronic pain, and that was something that they approached from, okay, this is more of a holistic approach, or not Western medicine, give a pill, come back in 6 months kind of approach. And dance movement therapy is definitely all about that mindfulness and that listening to your body and being in touch with your body and listening more to what comes up, as opposed to just sitting and talking about it. We're moving it, we might be talking about how we're moving, but it's going to more come from our body. And if our body's not in sync, our mind's not going to be in sync either. So it's something that I'm very definitely passionate about. I would love to get down to Bragg and talk to some people, but it is a little bit further of a drive than I might want to make. But so it's something that I think is kind of gradually trickling through, as far as in the VA settings, especially. And I know a good friend of mine, she's in Pittsburgh in the VA, and she works in the inpatient psychiatric setting. So she works a lot with guys with PTSD. She's done a presentation on working through moral injury and PTSD with a lot of her clients, and how that manifests itself in a session and discussions they have and that kind of thing. So
Nice.
Yeah, music therapy is really similar. Like, I personally have not had the opportunity to work in a VA or work with veterans directly, but are definitely music therapists that do. Actually, there's a couple music therapists right now who worked their way into the Durham VA and work there with the veterans there, and they speak a lot on behalf of music therapy and using tools like therapeutic songwriting or way of like actively making music in a way that allows for expression that words can't allow necessarily. So like, especially when you think about the culture surrounding like military work, I think maybe there's a culture, and you can speak to it probably more than I can, of like, we don't talk about it like it happened. We're supposed to be able to deal with it ourselves. And it's maybe thought as shameful to talk about it. So like, music therapy is a good way where you necessarily have to talk about it, but you're still being able to express it and work through it in your own time and in your own way, in a musical way, because we're all innately musical, whether we sing or not is beside the point. It's like, we all have music within us. We all enjoy music or interact or engage in music in some way every day in our lives. And so music therapy has had really good results in our research when it comes to working with veterans.
Nice. That's pretty cool. So, well, it kind of brings me to another one. And I guess that is, like, are there specific conditions and stuff like that, like diseases and whatnot, that you guys try to approach, or what is the need?
Sure. I mean, that's when people, one of the most common questions I get is, after what is dance therapy? Well, who do you work with? And I think obviously it's something that started more from the psychiatric standpoint, so dealing more with psychiatric illnesses. I have a lot of experience with inpatient psychiatric, both with adolescents and adults. So I've dealt a lot with, people who are obviously not safe and need to be, in acute care at that point in time. So I've worked a lot with people with schizophrenia, major depression, bipolar disorder, things like that. But I've also done a lot of work with kids in the community who have autism. And that's something too. A lot of those kids, if they can't speak, we're going to sing songs together. We're going to move together. And that's how a lot of times you can reach them, because talking or getting them to sit down and do something, a more typical child would do, more traditional kind of things. It's not going to get to them. It's going to be more frustrating. So I'd say there's really no limitation to it. Obviously, we approach it from a psychotherapy standpoint. So anyone who needs help in that department, but it's something that has been used a lot with dementia. It's been used with, like I said, children with autism, other developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, things like that.
I didn't realize it expanded to so many different.
Music therapy is the same. Like, it started with the need within more of like an inpatient psychiatric type of facility type of need, and it's expanded. And I think a lot of people who are not music therapists, but they know about it, really associate it now with people with autism or with folks who are disabled, or with older adults with dementia, or in inpatient psychiatric facilities. But it definitely extends further past that. Like, I've had the opportunity to work in many facets. So I've done inpatient work up at Central Regional Hospital in Butner. I've my first job, I worked 4.5 years and went into schools and worked with kids from elementary school all up through high school, various forms of disabilities and autism, and helping music, like engaging with them in music in a way that was able to give them language and help them express thoughts in ways that people kind of discount that they can't do. I've also worked with kids in residential facilities, so like kids who aren't with their parents for various reasons, whether it's for drug use on their end or the parents' end, or like parent-child conflict, or whatever is making it unsafe for them to be at home, and using music as a way to, as expression there, especially for teenagers. Well, that's a big area. Like we can all sit here and think back when we were teenagers, like how big of a role music probably played for us in identity formation. And then I don't know if this can be said for dance therapy, but for music therapy, it's gotten to the point where we've kind of made like subsections of music therapy depending on who you work with. So music therapy in hospital settings, like there are specifically music therapists who work in the NICU with like little babies who are having a hard time breathing, and so using music as a way to like stabilize heartbeat, or to work on mother-child relationship and bonding for their children, so that children can learn how to latch on for breastfeeding and to get the nutrients they need. There's also types of music therapy that are completely improvisational based. We think like Nordhoff Robbins, which is really geared towards more so the folks with autism and disabilities, where like they don't have to talk. Like the music is their language. The music expresses what they need to get out. Or we think about neurologic music therapy for folks with traumatic brain injuries or with dementia, to help with stabilizing that mood, or to help regain function in bodies and limbs, like using active music making to help someone who's experienced stroke like regain the ability to use their ambulatory muscles. And then we have more on the wellness side of things, where we get more into the psychotherapeutic world when we talk about analytic music therapy and how music expresses our unconscious thoughts, and then we talk about it afterwards to kind of get to the root of like, what's the root of this, and where's this coming from? So music therapy has really branched itself off into these different areas, and depending on the music therapist and their training, like they can meet those needs depending on the individuals.
Yeah, I'd say too, it's more kind of depending on the setting and the type of people you're working with. So if you're in, like you mentioned, working in the NICU and the mother-child bond, it's all about that common rhythm, and the rhythm, and the in dance therapy we talk about shaping. And so it's that relationship and that shaping of mother to child, and how, especially if it's a child that's born addicted, for example, they have no way to self-regulate. They may or may not have mom there to help teach them how to self-regulate, how to feed themselves. And it all, like, it comes down to that kind of shared rhythm, which obviously in music, he has it the same as we do as dance therapists, but it can come down to, is that simple of a thing. I think it's about finding, whether you're working with an individual, working with a group, working with a family even. It's just that building those relationships and your relationship to yourself and the world, to your parent, to your family. That's a lot of what it focuses on. So that whether that's in a setting like the NICU, like an inpatient psychiatric setting, or even I talked with some women recently who work in Philadelphia, and they work with, so it's the court appointed or the court monitored visits for parents who have lost custody of their children. The custodial parent is bringing the child or children to this government building downtown Philadelphia, and this is the monitored visit with the non-custodial parent, and they have started creative arts therapy groups there for those parents and their children.
Yeah. I think the big thing too, like a big takeaway, is I also think that a lot of people, when they think about creative arts therapies, they kind of box us, they kind of put us in a box and say that we only work with people with autism or disabled individuals or people with dementia or people in mental health facilities, which we do, but that's not the only thing we do. Like, I think we have the capacity to also work with every people on the street, like walking down the street, who just need wellness sessions, who are like, you know what, I'm having a hard time in life right now, I really need to work through that, and maybe talking is not the best way to do it. Which I think, I speak for myself in saying that's a lot of the work that draws me in, and kind of gives me fulfillment. Not to saying that previous work I've done has not, but I feel like there's it's missing a lot within society and also within music therapy as a profession, because I think we all get locked into the little niches that it falls into, which, to be fair, a lot of it has to do with job opportunity and availability.
Yeah.
You go where the money is at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
So I mean, with that, and I think you kind of touched on it a little bit. Where do you guys? I mean, because it seems like you both have a tremendous amount of passion for what you do for a living. I think that's pretty clear to see. Big picture, like, where are you both hoping that industry gets to? Like, the big vision.
I think from a local standpoint, or at least a state level standpoint, I would hope. I think I have it kind of community, state, national kind of thing. I would hope that it just from a state's level that we get more recognition as being, practitioners, and that what we do is valid, and it's not that I think there's some sense that what we're doing is not valid, or that we're not as good as the gold standard, air quotes, is evidence-based practices. So that's a lot of things like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and I've worked in a setting where cognitive behavioral therapy was the main approach curriculum, but they were happy for me to use movement that I had to, to bring into it. I had to write my notes based on cognitive behavioral, but I could do different interventions. So I think just having that recognition from the local governing bodies, from local, healthcare, from things like that, so that we can be in more settings, that we can be of use to more, and not just go around and say, like, well, hey, I can come volunteer to a group for you guys real quick, that we can be, make a living and do what we want to do, and not have to move somewhere far away to do that. Nationally, I think a lot's happening for dance therapy with the American Dance Therapy Association. That's our governing body. We do a lot with advocacy, with Arts Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill. A lot of states are struggling to get licensure right now. In New Jersey, dance therapists are trying to get their bill on the floor to get heard, to get a licensure there for dance therapy. And that's the big thing. It's the big roadblock, I'd say, is that licensing piece of it, because that's going to make you, seem official to the people that are going to pay you the money. So.
Yeah, I co-sign on all of that. I also feel like, for me, my big hope is, I think, the way that our world is kind of set up, we're also trusting in this idea of like evidence-based practice things, or like, there's this new method, there's CBT, there's DBT, there's this, like, it must be official because someone in the greater world said it was a thing, so now it's a thing. If you're not doing it, you're not in the in crowd, right? I think for music therapy, I'd like to see us kind of get back to the uniqueness of what music therapy is. I think in an attempt for us to be recognized and to become something that people look at and take seriously, we've adapted and molded a lot of things to fit kind of Western medicine ideals, which is fine. You got to play the game, right?
Sure.
But I also feel like in doing that, we sometimes lose sight of like the power that the music itself has, and really engaging in that relationship that we have with the folks that we are privileged enough to work with. So I would love to see music therapy kind of get back to like its roots and really like what made it special, as opposed to kind of continually molding itself to be what's going to be accepted. Additionally, I also feel like there's so much happening in the news and in politics and everything when it comes to the Trump administration, when it comes to the Black Lives Matter movement, when it comes to trans advocacy, non-binary advocacy, LGBTQ rights in general, women's rights, when it comes to immigration law and immigration rights. I think there's so much happening in those areas, and there are people in those populations that are struggling. And I would love to see music therapy really branch out and again break out of that box that I feel like we sometimes get stuck in, and serve those people in the ways that they need, particularly. And for me, that's a big thing for me. Like, I'm all about really, like, queer people of color is like I feel like it's my thing, my calling.
Yeah.
want to do, and really working on like identity formation with people like that, because as people of color, like, we already have a hard enough time trying to find our way in a world that sometimes doesn't let us in the door. Yeah. And then you add being queer or being gay or being trans or non-binary on top of that. Mm-hmm. It's like having to pick and choose when you can be what in front of who and in what circles, and that can be really like jarring to someone growing up going through all that. And so I would love to see. This is more about my personal thing. Music therapy, all music therapists should be doing it. Helping with that kind of thing, like really getting to the heart of what people need and stop seeing people as just diagnoses and things that need to be quote unquote fixed, and more so just like being with people in music.
And I love the fact that, I think the thing that I love most about this is it presents an alternative to just pushing pills on people.
Yep.
Right.
And I think that's very...
No, 100%.
Yeah, legal drug dealers, right? Anyway, so we won't get on that topic.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, that's another podcast. That's another show. So, are you ready to go to your favorite part?
Yeah, absolutely.
You are? Oh, man.
Okay, so in case you guys didn't know, there's 3 questions we've had brewing. Okay, the first one is, when you're not having fun with your music therapy and dance therapy, what do you like to do when you're off time?
Okay. Well, dance, obviously. Anything creative, artistic, things like that. I just love to be in that kind of realm and that kind of environment. I love spending time with my dogs. I have 3 fur babies, Maisie, Draco, and Kaya. We're a blended family now. So I had Maisie, she's 4.5, and my boyfriend has 2 dogs, Kaya and Draco. They're 10 and 2.5. So we are a full family now that we live together. I think just being out with my friends, socializing, eating good food, drinking good drinks. I do like to read. I'm not reading as much as I normally have in the past, I'll admit, but I love just like good mystery fiction, like things like that. I also read, for my field, more like the articles and research and things like that too. Yeah, to stay up to date on things. But yeah.
When I am not music therapy, no, music is always a part of what I do.
Yeah.
So like I'm in a semi-professional group with my roommate and a couple other friends. Triadic Vocals, look us up. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Triadic Vocals. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. We rehearse once a week, every week, and then when performances pop up, we show up and try to sing to the best of our abilities. So I do that. I also love musical theater, and so when opportunities come up for that, I love to get on stage and be someone else and then sing, and that is really fun for me. I too have my fur baby who I got this year. Her name is Logan. She just turned 1, as I mentioned, and she is like my whole world.
Oh yeah.
I love her better than most people.
Yes.
Again, game nights I love. I just had a game night on Friday. And that was, I'm such a homebody. Like I could literally just stay inside, play board games, and watch Netflix and sit on my couch and be completely content with life. And then when all that is not happening, I love to just spend time with my boyfriend who lives in Charlotte, so we do the distance game. But I love spending time with him too. And his cat, which I've had to learn to be a cat person. and pop a Claritin every time I go visit.
Oh goodness.
Yes. Absolutely. So I think you actually hit on this one, Adrianne, but what are you currently reading?
Oh, currently not anything at this exact moment. There's no bookmarking a page right now. I have like the ever-growing stack of stuff. Fiction, I have to stop myself from going to the Barnes & Noble and spending money. I've gotten better over the years than I used to be. But yeah, I'm just a fan of fiction, just anything, like a lot of female writers. I've recently, our American Dance Therapy Association annual conference was a couple weeks ago in Miami. So it's always fun to go there, and we do it regionally, so it's different places every year. I definitely have like my reading list going from that to, things to look into, things to read. Yeah.
Right. Anything interesting?
Currently, I am reading articles that have to deal with Black identity formation.
Okay, there we go.
And queer people of color for my thesis work.
What are you writing? What's your thesis on?
So my thesis, I am trying to look at the ways in like what can music improvisation tell us? What can music improvisation tell queer people of color about the ways in which they perform their sexual and racial identities in certain social contexts. So, like, as a queer person of color, how does your whatever your race is, how does your race come out in spaces that are all that race, or in white spaces? How does your queerness come out in mostly heteronormative spaces? That kind of thing, and how that can kind of inform or shed new light on, like, why am I doing that? Why is that a thing? Am I protecting myself? Is it because I don't feel safe being my authentic self in certain spaces? So that's what my thesis is going to be on. So we're doing a lot of reading on that. When I have free time to read, which has been, who knows the last time that happened, I have to confess, I love like young adult novels because those are the best. I was like, books for adults are terrible for the most part. So yes, I like to peruse the young adult section. Oh, you know what? The latest book I read was yesterday. I went to South Point Mall and went to Barnes & Noble, and I read Karamo Brown and his son's new children's book,
Yes.
I'm Perfectly Designed, because
Is
he
it
talked
good?
about it. It's so cute.
Is it
It's
cute?
a very nice book. It's
Good.
very nice to see, like, a queer person of color write a book with his son, who's also a queer person of color, and, like, see yourself reflected in the book.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because it's a black father and a black son, so that was really good to see in a children's book of all, because I think that is important.
Very.
So that was the fun book I read in the store. It took me all
That's a little too
5
advanced
minutes.
for Ryan myself.
It's got great pictures and illustrations.
Well, then that's not true. It's got pictures.
It's got illustrations.
Yeah.
It's like 2 sentences per page. I highly recommend it.
All right, maybe 2 days. Anyway, so last question: if people want to reach out to you, how can you best be found?
I would say theartcounseling.com, www. is our website. That's the best way to, if you're seeking to work with either of us or anybody that's on our team, that's the best way to reach out. To schedule a time to meet, that kind of thing. I'm on social media. I'm Adrianne McKee, MCKEE. That's just my personal vibe, but I mean, doesn't mean you can't send me a message if you don't want to. I'm happy to talk. So.
Right. Yeah. If professionally, you can definitely reach us through theartcounseling.com. Specifically, if you want to get in touch with Siobhan Moore, who runs the whole. She's the boss lady.
Our fearless leader.
You
She's
can
amazing.
contact her at her email, which I believe is smoore@theartllc.com.
Correct.
That is the email address.
That is the email.
And I mean, personally, you can find me on the Facebook and the
Gram.
Instagram, the
Gram.
Gram. I don't tweet. That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think people care enough about what I do every 5 minutes to have a Twitter. On there, my handle is _Project Perkins, because my name was not available. So
No.
so reach me out on there, or you can find me at Triadic Vocals, triadic.vocals on Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah. So thank you both for being here, Adrianne, Freddy. Definitely appreciate you for being on the show.
Thanks for having
us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we're about due for a closeout.
A closeout?
Yeah.
Do I get to do it this time?
That's your cue.
That's my cue. I'll start. Thank you guys for joining us. And just like that, we're out. We'll see you next show.